Okay. So I have that it is 1 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody to our first webinar series based on the award winners, the Caudill Award winners from the Tassin School of Architecture exhibit, which this year was sponsored by the A4LE Southern Region Foundation. My name is Irene Nigaglione, and I am the chair of the Southern Region Foundation. And I'm very excited for our partnership and our sponsorship of this event, because it allows us to showcase the wonderful work that school districts and school design firms are doing across the state of Texas. This is our initial year participating in this and taking a more active role, but we look forward to expanding that role in the future, as well as expanding that role into other states, moving into Oklahoma next, where we will be launching a School of Architecture exhibit as well. Today's presentation is it's based on the STEM Exploration Center at Berkner High School in Richardson Independent School District. We have 3 panelists that will be holding the presentation today, and it's my pleasure to introduce them. The first panelist is Sandra Hayes, Superintendent of Operations at Richardson ISD. Sandra has 30 years of experience in education, all in Richardson ISD. She began her tenure as a teacher and coach at the junior high level, then moved to central administration. She held positions with the Curriculum and Instruction Department, Instructional and Technology Department, and Career and Technical Education before she was appointed as Assistant Superintendent of Technology. Presently, Sandra is the Assistant Superintendent of Operations for the district. Pursuing education as a lifelong learner, she recently completed her superintendent certification in a doctoral program at the University of North Texas. So first of all, congratulations, Sandra, and everybody will help me welcome Sandra. Wave for everybody. There you go. Our second presenter is Lee Cordy with Perkins Will. Lee Cordy is the project architect in the Dallas studio of Perkins Will, with more than 9 years of experience working predominantly with K-12 and higher education clients. Throughout her career, Lee has meticulously assisted in preparing drawings, organizing project teams, and coordinating with the client to make sure their needs are met. She has navigated several challenging projects through a successful end, and as a result, is constantly recognized by our clients for her efforts. Outside of the office, she serves on the AIA Board of Directors for Emerging Leaders, chair of the Education Outreach for AIA Dallas, and member of the ACE Mentor Program, as well as ELP Class of 2019 graduate and Richardson ISD PIP Mentor. Welcome, Lee. And then our last speaker is, I don't think needs a lot of introduction, but it's Ms. Vandana Nayak. Based in the Dallas studio of Perkins Will, Vandana is a regional education practice leader for Texas and works with clients across the state to deliver the next level of excellence in K-12 and higher education architecture and design. Having worked with educational clients for more than 2 decades, Vandana has a unique ability to understand her clients' intentions and aspirations beyond simply listening to the words they say. This is especially powerful for her education clients, who typically have a large number of constituents involved, all with diverse perspectives. She is able to navigate through the many voices, create a clear vision, and translate that into a built facility that exceeds her clients' expectations. Welcome, Vandana. So through the presentation, if you have any questions, please post those on the chat. I will be noting those and we'll try to gather them all for the end. If there's a specific question that you would like answered quickly, I'll try to make sure that we alert our panelists and get that answered. So with that, I am very thrilled to pass it on to Vandana.
Thank you, Irene. We're excited to be here. I think it's a great testament to our ISD's vision on what they wanted to create in their community. It was a small project in terms of dollars, but I think the impact and the ripple effect of it will be seen for many years to come. Trying to get to the next slide. We already went through introductions, so I'll pass it on to Sandra to give us a little background of how we got started on this project.
Thank you, Vandana. Thank you so much for having me today. Richardson ISD is so excited to be the recipient of Perkins and Will amazing design for our STEM Center. So here in Richardson ISD, we are a inner circle suburb of the city of Dallas. And so we are one of the fourth most diverse districts in the state, and Berkner mirrors that diversity. We have had STEM education in Richardson ISD for many years, but what we didn't have was a specific facility that really drove what STEM education might feel like for students. And so we wanted a place for all of our kids in, this is our what we call our Berkner learning community, which is Berkner High School and all the elementary and junior highs that feed into it. So this has students that come in from pre-K all the way through seniors in high school. So we wanted a very flexible facility that worked within the learning instructional model that we have here in the districts. So we were very excited to be able to use our existing high school and repurpose some of the existing classroom space to create this phenomenal STEM center that Perkins and Will helped to develop for us. As you can see, Berkner High School is a traditional site high school made for about 3,000 students with all of the different amenities that a high school needs to have at a 6A level. For our athletics, fine arts, and then lots of CTE programming at Berkner as well as standard traditional classrooms. It was built in the late 60s, so it is more of a traditional high school. We sit again just a little bit north of the city of Dallas. Richardson ISD encompasses the city of Dallas, city of Richardson, and city of Garland. Berkner has students that come both from the city of Garland and the city of Richardson, and a few that seep over into our southern sector of Dallas. Again, the diversity you see there on the screen mirrors what we have at the state level and in Richardson ISD. We have 11 elementary schools that feed into Berkner, 2 what are currently junior highs that we're getting ready to do a middle school transformation on that, and then the center here at Berkner High School. We do have a lot of meetings here as well as a district just to help our faculty and staff understand what STEM education really is, and that's part of the wow factor of this facility that Perkins and Will put together for us, is just helping everyone to visually feel and see what STEM education is like. We are located in the what we call the local telecom technology business corridor up and down US 75. And we were fortunate that we have the ability to tap into all these businesses that you see located here to be mentors to our students, mentors to our staff, and to be able to come on site in the STEM Center and help our students realize what it means to be an electrical engineer, or what it means to do research on biotechnologies or fly a plane, all the different parts and pieces that we incorporate here in the STEM Center. So here we have the Fortune 500 companies and local businesses located on that map that you can see. We have the STEM Center initiatives, which early engagement through immersion experiences, and that's what's so phenomenal about this facility that Perkins Will put together. You can go from a kind of a traditional sit-down classroom into a wet lab, into a dry lab, into this immersion studio that takes you anywhere in the world in one particular time, and you don't have to leave the center to do all of that. And so to put all that together in this unique setting was very exciting for us, and our students just love just walking into this facility. You get this sense of, I think I might be like in a museum where I can touch things and feel things and do things. And so that's really what we were looking for when we said, let's build a STEM center.
So I'll dive a little into planning. So they had a few dollars left from their previous bond, and there was space on the Berkner High School that was not as utilized because they were older CTE spaces. So about 7,500 square foot space, and about $2 million was the amount of money we had to get started on this project. But one thing that they saw as they were creating the STEM high school pathway is that a lot of students had already created their attitude and aptitude for STEM learning, whether it is math, science, or engineering. somewhere around their 12th or 13th birthday. So if you try to catch them at high school, it was already too late. Trying to get them even in middle school to start thinking in that path was a bit late. So we started to talk about what should we actually do to create that aptitude and that thinking so we can create that future leaders in STEM fields or in any field, but they can be future leaders who think critically, who are curious about the world around them, who are always interested in exploring why, what next, and can solve some of the big problems that face the world today. So to create that next set of community leaders and to create people who can use that kind of STEM thinking, one of the things that came out of our planning session with Richardson ISD was to engage students as early as in kindergarten. Sure, the engagement would look different when you're in a kindergarten class compared to if you're in a 12th grade class, but how could one center be a place that could capture the imagination and provide the tools necessary for kids all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade? So we started to look, right as that challenge came in, we started to look and say, what are some of the precedent studies where there can be a building that can educate, inform, excite, and create interest across all age groups? And the first project type that did come to our mind was a museum. If you walk into any science museum, age is no bar. You can be a little child and be excited about that journey, or you could be 99 years old and still kind of find ways to get engaged with that space and the feel and the touch and get to learn science in a more interesting and exciting way. So our first visioning workshop, rather than having it in a traditional school setting, we decided to host it at the Perot Museum. And the Perot Museum people were just so supportive. They not only allowed us free space to host it, they gave us tickets to go through the museum, and we're very interested in being a partner with Richardson ISD so they could potentially bring exhibits out here to the center to create more interest in science. So that was our first workshop. And then we had series of workshops where we challenged a lot of the standard ways of thinking. How should learning occur? How should science learning occur? And what are the tools that the teachers need to build the confidence and competence in the students to explore STEM careers? Because a lot of times when maybe it's an English teacher who's teaching a student and maybe they're teaching a class and there are students there who might want to be exploring science, but they may not, the English teacher may not have the tools necessary to give the students a confidence and the competence of where they should be exploring it, what they should do next. So we spoke a lot about not only the type of learning that the students would have, but also the type of training the teachers would need to accomplish this. So it was a center that would accomplish both. It would be a place where you could bring kids as young as kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. It's a place where you could bring the community in so you could educate them, or you could build that trust and confidence in the community and capacity. You could bring in business partners so they would find a place to connect through mentorship or through their training programs. And finally, the partnerships with universities and with other leaders in the community to help give the teachers the tools they need through professional development so they can have the right competency to go in. So it was asking a lot of things out of the space.
We'll add to that, just for those of you that are planning, when you take educators out of our natural setting, out of the schools that we're used to, taking us to the museum was a remarkable start to the planning of this project because it opens up that vision for folks. Sometimes we get locked into what we're used to seeing as educators. And so for Perkins and Will to think that through and to really get us out of our comfort zones and into an area where we could really dream and vision was such a strong point for this project to be so successful.
And to be away from all the distractions of their desk, right? So if you're close to your campus as a principal, you're always dragged into the things that are happening with the school. Mm-hmm. So we could take them all out and spend a whole day, which was really valuable time. And some of the questions that we asked them were, what are some of the learning experiences you value? Or what are the teaching approaches that you actually teach in a classroom but are not able to do it today? Or what are the tools that your teachers would need to successfully convey the competence especially in the middle school years when students are trying to make that decision. So with all of those things, and it was a really fun, interactive session, we got a lot of feedback back from those first two visioning workshops, especially the first all-day intense workshop, which gave us a lot of really broad strokes of things that we would need. And of course, everything was not solved. I started programming things that the client knew, Richardson ISD, that they would have to go back and work with their teams and put the programs together. We also, in the meantime, and the principal at that time, Henry Hall, had identified the 5 strands that would be important to teach at a high school level. And those 5 strands are noted here, which is aviation, biotechnology, STEM management, robotics. That's it, third one. And to go through, we looked at those 5 strands across. But then the way you would teach those 5 strands in a high school would be different than what would happen at a middle school, what would happen at an elementary school. So we first looked at specific programs, but then we didn't want to craft corners, like 5 corners across in the center, easy way to solve it. But what happens when one of those centers change? What if tomorrow we have 6 strands rather than 5? Or what if biotechnology is going to take more than just one corner and maybe half the center? So what we then decided to do is to layer that over to the spaces they would need to create that. So for example, you might need to create a wind tunnel to understand aviation. But what type of space do you need to create that wind tunnel? Where does that equipment go? And then is that borrowed? Does that stay? But what type of activity would then engage a high school student to understand aviation? So after going through some deep thinking of both the programs that could come in today, knowing that the programs will change in the future, and the strands, knowing that these are the things we teach today, but will change in the future, we actually decided to design the building around just basic functions. So we would create an area, like Sandra mentioned, which is a messy lab or a wet lab. We create an area which is a clean lab or a dry lab area where you can have more technology-rich things. The messy lab has more things to do with the sink or other such things that would require exhaust or water. And then created an area for both orientation, professional development in a stand and teach kind of area, so like the lecture and train. But also the fourth and important component of it was creating an immersion space where you could analyze data, you could look and get experiences from a different place, all together at the same in the same center. So divided the center actually basically into these 4 things and created collaboration area in the middle that would allow for you to bring exhibits, use them, take the exhibits away, or use that as a place, as a collaboration space in the middle. As we went through this portion of messy lab, clean lab, immersion studio, and training, we did not have an overlay of technology as the first step. The first step for us was to figure out all the things that we wanted to do in this space. And then we researched the different technologies that were available for us to overlay on top of these spaces. So the immersion studio was almost the last piece of technology that both was figured out and installed.
Right.
A lot of conversations and research went into figuring this out. It's one of a kind. You might have seen a globe where things are projected on a globe. And it's the same company, Igloo, that produces this. But instead of creating it on a globe, or instead of creating it as a small hexagon tent space, what we were interested is an entire class needed to experience that space with that all the way around them. So it's really a custom product. It's a first of a kind for them. So it took a lot of planning, and Lee led a lot of those coordinations and planning to ensure that it had seamless execution as we went through it. So this is a little snapshot of the space before. What you see on the left-hand side, there were some of these existing programs. They were mostly home ec and other kind of older CTE programs that were no longer popular in the high school. So they were really underutilized. And what you see on the right is the same space that that was then transformed. A big component of it as a designer is to have restraint. It's so easy to add extra walls. It's so easy to put in all this extra storage and build everything, but it takes a lot of restraint to make it real minimal to where We only built the most minimum number of walls that we would need to create acoustical separation or visual separation. But for the most part, it's just really an open space, and furniture is the solution. So as you walk into the space from the stairs, the space is on the second floor. We used the stair as an area to where so there are some pictures probably down the road where you'll see there's a gear. And we had a museum exhibit designer who came and helped us with that. That creates a little motion as you walk through it. So a lot of students walk through it. The windmill goes faster, the gears turn. Just a few students are walking through it. The gears turn slower, and the windmill kind of rotates in a much slower fashion. Just kind of giving you a clue that, hey, there's something that that's about to happen. That's where the number 9 mark is on the plan. As you walk in further in, there is a place where we wanted them to either have it like a bulletin board or make your mark, so a student can come in there, leave a mark, and then every year as they come for the next 12 years, can kind of build on that and create this beautiful art ensemble across that will kind of create a new history or a new legacy for the center. So that's what you see as you walk into that place. What you see as number 3 are those collaboration spaces across with a wall all the way on the end, so that journey. Number 6 is your classroom space. The messy and the clean labs are on either side of the collaboration space. And that last space, 05, that you see is the immersion studio. I'll pass it on to Lee on how she worked through the whole execution of that project.
Thanks, Bea. So looking at the design inspiration, we looked at a lot of elements from biophilic design and different systems in nature when we were thinking about the design for the STEM Center. So there's so many geometric patterns in nature that matched a lot of STEM activities, such as math and engineering, and you'll see that when we look into some of the photos. We also pulled a lot of colors from nature to inspire the STEM Center too, which you can see in the bottom was our color palette that we were going with. The next slide. So as Vandana said, this project had a small budget, but it also had a very quick timeline as well. So Richardson received their grant in January of 2018. And in August of 2018, we started our visioning sessions to really define what the scope of work would be. And then just a couple months later, we started demolition. Demolition started in December of 2018. So while demolition was happening, we started having meetings with the district to really design and select furniture, which would be a key component on the STEM's flexibility. How do you choose furniture for a kindergartner versus how do you use furniture for a 12th grader as well? So that's a key component to some of the flexibility of this space. And then construction itself actually started April of 2019. So in April and May, they were throwing up studs and treating the existing deck of the entire space, since all of it was going to be exposed ceiling, because Richardson liked that really modern industrial look. And within the months of June and July, they were starting to treat the ceilings, bring a lot of the HVAC in, do a lot of the electrical rough-ins, and starting installing some of the storefront. And so then finally in August, they started installing a lot of the lighting, doing final paint, coordinating a lot of the graphics. And just within 5 months, we had our final punch list and the space was ready to go. Next slide. Also, while we were revamping the upstairs for what the STEM Center is today, the district had requested us to renovate their library as well. And the library is at the main entrance of the building, which sits directly under the STEM Center. So we really wanted to make sure that the elements from the STEM Center were being pulled from upstairs, downstairs, similar colors, similar geometric patterns, just to really give the user a full STEM experience the minute they enter Berkner High School. And design to construction for the library itself was just about 6 months, including furniture. So all of this was happening at once. We were really trying to revamp Berkner High School to be this full STEM school. Next slide. Again, here's another image of the library where you can see a lot of transparency. Again, pulling in a lot of these geometric shapes, a lot of the same colors. And then as V had mentioned, we worked with a museum exhibit designer to do these gears. And so the journey from the library to the staircase, you're totally introduced to STEM learning. And there's a motion sensor at the very top of that landing. So once it's triggered by a student or a teacher, the fan starts to turn, and then that triggers all the other gears. And a lot of the words that are displayed on this exhibit were derived from the visioning sessions that we had with the district and the community. Next slide. So quickly to go through the photo, the geometric patterning, you'll see it in the lights above, you'll see it in the window film, the shape of the tables. And as V kind of went through the floor plan, you can see the messy lab is on the left and it has a sink, and that area is really intended for experiments to get dirty that need hand washing. The clean lab is on the right, and that's intended for experiments such as robotics. And also along the back wall, the district has a lot of their 3D printers and computers. And then right, this view of the photo in the center is the spine of collaboration through the middle that allows for students to go back and forth and use that middle space as a true collaboration space. And then finally, on the right was the teaching training room for professional development. And as this district is really paving the way for the future of education, having this big open space to instruct students might not be something that a lot of teachers are really familiar with. So the district has this training room to inform their staff on how to use this facility to its full potential. And also one of the things that's really interesting about Richardson is they will hire out STEM-centric companies to come in and use the space to conduct experiments. So in this particular picture, when we did photography, was the day that they had Mad Science, a company, come in and do hands-on experiments with the kids. And just looking at the furniture in the space as well, it was designed for flexibility. So all the seats are adjustable for a kindergartner versus a 12th grader. And like I said, everything's adjustable, everything's on casters, and the seats themselves are actually movable. So if you have a kindergartner sitting on a chair, they're able to wiggle around back and forth, and it helps them focus their attention on what's being instructed in the class, as well as giving them a chance to kind of wiggle around and get some of their energy out. And again, this is another image of the Mad Scientist company that came in and was hosting experiments. And you can see the kids playing with the stools, adjusting the stools, wiggling around, but still being engaged with what lesson is being learned or being taught. And then also another image on the very back wall is our inspiration wall. And the idea of this graphic is to educate and showcase really famous scientists through time. And a unique characteristic about the design of this graphic is it's designed for flexibility. So all the faces that you see back there, they have magnet backings. So you're able to remove the scientist and put a new scientist on. So it really keeps the kids engaged, like, oh, that could be me on the wall one day as they go through this program. And I think one of the most unique gems in this space, and you can see the entrance on the right, is the immersion studio. And so as V touched on it, the immersion studio is a complete VR experience and utilizes a product called Igloo Vision. So Richardson is the only school in the country to have this true 360 immersion studio within a K-12 school. And there was a lot of coordination that needed to be done to get this room constructed. So you can't tell in the photo, but the walls of this entire room are radiused at a certain degree because that's what gives the projected image a total 360 experience for the kids. There's a storage closet and there's a door back there as well, but you can't see it because it was strategically hidden with this image. And so students can really like visit the depths of the ocean or visit different countries or study the stars and planets all while being in a school. So that's a really interesting aspect of this immersion studio. And I think one of the biggest impacts that this facility has made is that it's accessible for all students in the district. The facility has a district-wide calendar. So if you're a teacher in one of the middle schools or elementary schools and you want to use this facility and take your class there, all you need to do is book a time and a bus will come and take your entire class to this facility to use. And I think this creates such a nice community environment, not only for Berkner High School, where it's located, but also just think about being a first grader and getting to take a field trip to the local high school and you get to learn from there. It just creates such a nice, awesome sense of community for this district to have this facility available for everybody.
This is a snapshot of the professional development that also happens. So this is a virtual dissection screen that you can actually virtually dissect frogs or look inside how a heart looks, and you can virtually dissect it. But it's a great place both for students to try out these different technologies, but also teachers to get their hands-on experience and learn from it, so that they can go back into their classrooms and teach in a more effective way. We have a short video that we have put together, kind of expressing a day in the life of a student if they came to visit this center. So this is as you walk up the stairs. Lee showed the gear on one side. On the other side, you have this little shiny logo that kind of bubbles and sparkles. As you walk through the space, you have the training on to the right, you have the STEM director's office here to the left, the Messy Lab to the left, the quadrilles and others are all hidden up in your black ceiling. So you can pull that down, tons of power all through the building, so that can allow them to have different programs coming in. And we really wanted to capture a sense of science and just the wonder and joy that you can have coming into a place that doesn't look exactly like a school when you just walk into that space. So there's something different, something special that goes on. So this door that you see here, you pretty much see them in museum installations where you're trying to limit the amount of light coming in through a door. And it turns, it pivots at the center. When it's closed, it looks just like a wall. It's all done with a sheetrock wall. We put a nice signage right behind it across. And so that door opens up, you go in. This was a day they were talking about the solar system, which I think is great for little kids to kind of see, solar flares. What is the sun doing in there? But if you think about a time that we live right now, there is a gap between kids who can afford to travel to different places. And there's a gap, whether it's socioeconomic reasons or other reasons, where some kids can travel, they know other traditions, know other cultures, are more globally aware, and some who are not. But this center and spaces like this can actually cover that gap in a very effective way and create more globally aware citizens. Also, the experience of just at a younger age, it's one thing to see a sea turtle on your little iPhone or on a little device, but it's another thing to have the experience of actually being down on a deep sea or in a different land. And as for the older kids, it is less about just traveling to another place. It's more about when they can look at complex data, and they can analyze that data in a complex way, and it requires a larger screen. Say they're analyzing a heart attack and looking at components of the fibers, the different thing that happens in there. So just the ability to scale things up. Or it could be a place where they are creating, last time when I was here, I saw students were creating 4D content and were actually deploying it out onto the screen. And that's part of their career CTE pathway, where they might be in broadcast studio or other such programs where they can actually create that media and program in 4D and actually have it out there into that space. So the center, at this point, unfortunately, the programming is a lot tighter, smaller because of COVID restrictions, but we hope come summer, it can open up again and it can come back to being a big part of the community. So that was a tour. We wanted to see what is that most effective way to bring the building to you all. And so Dan Creekmore in our office put that little video together of some captures that Richardson ISD had done prior to mask mandates and COVID and stuff. So it kind of shows you the excitement the students have as they walk through the space. And that is about the presentation we have. I wanted to open it up for questions and see if there are any questions from the audience.
So yes, Vanna, thank you so much, Sandra and Lee. That was a great presentation. What a wonderful space. The first question that we received from Liz is, can you share more about the technology used for the immersion studio?
Sure, I can answer this one, B. So for the Igloo Vision company, so the way they needed to have the technology was they'll look at the size of the room, and then based on the size of the room, they'll calculate how many projectors are needed. And these aren't a typical projector. It's a projector that has a certain fish lens that goes down and points a certain way. And so you'll work, if you're trying to design this for your facility, you'll work with the Igloo product people. And it really is pretty simple. It's projectors that are just around the room that shine on the wall, but there's particular paint that you need to select. And then all the wiring is above ceiling and it all gets hosted to a podium. And the podium is basically the data center that everything lives in. And so the podium is where the computer will live, that you can control which scenes go on the walls or which activities they do. And then also integrated with the Igloo projectors is their sound system. So there's speakers actually hidden throughout the room as well. And there's a certain elevation that you need to have your paint above so you can conceal all of those speakers. Because the lens will only capture a certain length from the floor to the ceiling. But
Also,
it's pretty simple.
Just to add to that, if you're building a room for the immersion studio, your HVAC system has to be special. Igloo will talk to you because of where the vents are and the way the system operates. It throws off those projectors, because of their unique style, give off a lot of heat. So the immersion studio, we had to put in a separate HVAC system so that it wouldn't overheat that technology.
We have a follow-up question from Liz asking if there are certain videos and things that you purchase for that system.
Yes. So you cannot just run your regular 2D video. You could, but it'll only take half the screen. So it does require 4D videos.
Okay.
So
And
what is interesting, if I may just add to that, is some of the newer advertisements that are getting launched, like for example, Ford's latest advertisement that they launched was all 4D. So you get the experience of actually being right next to the car, in the car, going through. So they look at this as an emerging technology, and we're starting to see advertisements come out or other product placement that are coming out.
okay, we have a couple other questions about, are there a lot of resources out there for teachers to utilize the 4D immersion learning experiences? And how often does the campus use this room?
So before COVID, the room was used every day with whatever group come in. And so, yes, there are resources available, and our STEM, executive director of STEM, oversees building that curriculum and finding those resources for the different levels that come into the building.
I'm gonna add one more thing is, if you look at what universities are doing today, this whole big data analysis, or even whether it is computation, whether it is anything to do with engineering or sciences, you will see highly immersive screens and highly immersive rooms that will allow them to have that magnified lens. So it is a resource that there are a lot of resources out there. The STEM director is actively working on it, but it also helps them with the college readiness for these students.
The nice thing about the studio for the curriculum, because it's in other industries already, even though it wasn't in the K-12 world until we put ours in, because it is found in other industries, those resources can be adapted as instructional materials for our teachers.
Great. We have another question. How many classes of students use the space at a time during non-COVID times?
We actually designed it for an entire grade level to come. So we looked at what Richardson's entire grade level would look like. So say one elementary school would decide, my 4th grade is going to come out here. So we designed it large enough to accommodate an entire grade level.
Great. So one of the things that came up during the award review was everybody was really astounded by how much the space changed with the limited amount of money. So can you elaborate on your grant and the amount, and again, square footage, and how were you able to stretch the dollar the way you did?
So the construction money came from bonds. The grant actually helped them with teacher training and procuring some of those materials. You saw the screens and other such things. It helped them with that. So what they procured from the grant was outside of our budget, like some of the equipment. What the construction budget included was everything that you see built, the furniture, and the immersion studio. So that technology. So those pieces and the TVs and stuff, those kinds of pieces are part of the construction budget. Lee, do you want to answer the exact numbers?
Yeah, it was about 2.5 million. And it's a little higher because originally the immersion studio was not part of this, but right after we finished the STEM center, we retrofit a room to have the immersion studio. So there's a little bit of an additional cost because we did a little bit of demo, a little bit of rework to get the immersion studio what it is today, but about 2.5.
I want to answer the second part of your question, Irene. You asked how were we able to accomplish? Sometimes less is more. So if you notice, even as you look at the pictures, there's very few really walls or built-in things. Everything is really mobile. We made it as furniture solution. We exposed all the ceilings. It's all sprayed, painted, and it's one simple flooring that was about, I think, $6 a square feet. Really, the most expensive thing in the project are those lights. Those were custom lights with a green color to it. So those were shown to be, it looks kind of like random pieces, but all the way, by the time you end up on the far end of the center, they become like full hexagon shapes. And then everything else that you see, like what Lee was talking about, those magnetic decals are like $10 a piece. You can peel them out, print them, a new one, put them on. So we were super conscious of being very careful of how we actually spent the money. We were counting every penny and dollar as we were working on the project. The immersion studio was probably a very expensive piece, but finishes wise, I would say the lights were probably the most. But any building needs lights. So it was a small premium to pay on top of just a regular 2x2 lights.
That's great. I just received another question. Since this is a district-wide facility, how do you handle security of students in and out through the high school?
Big question.
I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
The security of the space.
So we put the entrance at the main entrance of our campus is where kids have to come in so that the office knows what school's coming. Certainly before COVID, when volunteers were allowed, they had to be screened and already badged from their local school before they came to the high school with the group. And then the staircases at the front of the school that Perkins Will was able to add those unique pieces to on the walls to kind of get you excited as you're coming up the stairs. So the elementary kids do not have to go deep into the high school to get to this. They're able to just come to the front office and then up the staircase.
And then as a district,
Noise in the back, we've got some high school kids that are joining us today.
as a district, are you considering building another one of these at any of your other high schools?
We've talked about it, but funding is a deal. So right now we don't have any on our agenda to add to. Eventually, we would like to have a STEM center at each of our high schools.
Okay, well, we really appreciate it. As I said, during the jury process, your project rose to the top because not every school district had the opportunity to do a major new construction project or a major renovation. And everybody felt that given your budget and the limited space, as a district, you were wildly successful at creating a very future-focused learning environment. So we thank you for sharing your project with us. If anybody has any questions after this and you think, I forgot to ask and I'd like to know more, just posting my, I'll post my email in the chat here. And if you want to send it to me, I'll be happy to pass it along to everybody else. And again, we appreciate everybody. We will be doing one of these. March 31st is our next one at Tippett Middle School, Georgetown ISD. So we hope that you will join us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you guys. Bye.
Hey.
Okay, good job.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Project, guys.
I know.
Great.
Thank you.
I know you hadn't seen it, Janelle. See, I saw it. I sat in the jury. I'm like, yeah.
Appreciate it.
Amazing. I love it.
Sometimes these small projects are fun, right?
Yeah.
They're fun.